We're ready to go. Okay. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming by and joining us. We have another full house again. I'd like to thank Reid, personally, Reid Auto with Reidsflyshop for allowing us to host this here once a month. And certainly would like to thank our sponsors, particularly Semperfli, for supplying us with some fantastic products throughout the years and changing our fly tying, certainly worldwide. So tonight we're going to talk about chenilles. So again, it's a matter of using a product and how do you incorporate that into your fly patterns by utilizing different techniques and procedures. We're all accustomed to working with chenilles. They've been around for a very, very long time in the fly tying industry worldwide. And they also all seem to have some commonality to them in the sense that there's a set of core yarns, which kind of is a skeletal structure of the chenille, regardless of the type of chenille, and the pile length. And so that can be from very short to quite long. So we have, material like some of the older traditional types of chenilles that we've had over the years, to tinsel chenilles, to variegated chenilles, sparkle chenilles. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But what's relevant is the type of core and the type of pile, what the pile material is made of and how long that pile is. Traditionally, all we've ever really seen, for the most part, is we'll take a chenille and wrap it on for a body or on a hook shank to represent a body. But you very, very seldom see people interchanging or mixing chenilles to create or to have different effects. So by mixing a soft piled chenille, 2 mil, 3 mil, or 5 mil with something that has a longer set of piles to it, in the 10 mil, 12 mil, 15 mil, 20 mil, 40, 70, 100, 200 mil. So what some of the chenilles that we have, this particular here one, the trade name is called, was it Polar Wrap? No, sorry, not right. Hula Wrap, sorry. And then we'll have other chenilles along this line. Again, the pile length is about a 40 mil. So the way it's measured is from one end to the other end. Okay, so it's not halfway down the core, it's the full length of the actual pile. So chenille is also a French word for caterpillar, and I mean the product was originally made back in the 1800s in France, and then there was a lot of organic materials that moved into different parts of the world with the new chenille factories developing in Italy and in China and India. So there's all kinds of sources manufacturing wise, and everyone makes something a little bit different, but they all have a common structure to them with the core yarns and with the pile, and it's just a matter of how you mix that together, how many piles per inch you have, and that's based on I believe it's number of meters in a kilo. So 400 meters would be a denser product than an 800 meter per kilo. Right, so that's how it's measured out in the textile industry. And chenilles are originally made for the textile trade and furniture trade. So that's where it came from. It wasn't a fly tying thing. It was brought into the fly tying world eventually, but it started out as a textile product and a furniture textile product. So for clothing and furniture making. So when we work with chenilles, there's some common things. I learned a new word. It's called blooming the chenille. Often what we'll do is we'll take it off a card or off a spool and just let it sit out. And eventually the piles will open up and just become fuller. You can help that and aid that along as well by brushing it with a wire brush or with a nylon brush, but you have to be careful. I generally tie it in before I do that so that I don't pull any piling material out off the core. And that just helps make it fuller and denser. And then when I actually wrap it, I'll pull the pile back as I wrap it. But the whole idea of chenilles, there's a few things going on in the industry today. I predict we'll probably see more synthetic chenilles coming for one primary reason, and that is it is getting more and more difficult to travel to different countries with your flies that have organic materials in them, being feather and fur. I think what's happening is some of these security border crossings and these security border people are not being trained. It's being possibly too costly in some countries to train their security people on the CITES programs of those endangered species or extinct species or species that are not to be traded in the fly tying world. And this is becoming more and more obvious, and as a result I think it's going to force the fly tying industry and the manufacturing of fly tying material more into synthetic type of materials. When I look back at chenilles, like I said, we generally use them as a body wrap. It was very common to use that on a woolly booger, and that's one of the primary material used in a 3-fly pattern called a woolly bugger. You had a tail of feathers and a hackle, wire to hold a hackle in, and a chenille. And I probably tie with myself, I would say 50 to 70% of my flies have some type of a chenille type yarn in them. So it's a very versatile product to use. So what I'm going to do first is tie a clink hammer. Hans van Klinken has basically stated now, because of the CITES program with peacocks, or peacocks being on the CITES program, that it's getting more and more difficult to travel with clink hammers with peacock herl in on the thorax. And he has moved himself to a micro straggle, a semperfli product micro straggle, for the thorax section, and he's mixing up different colors, and it's working out very well. So the micro straggle itself is, just this kind of it's a 2 or a 4 mil chenille. It's fairly sparse, kind of leggy. And you can see there's not as many piles per inch as opposed to taking, let's say, a blob chenille, which has considerably more piles per inch. So there's not a lot of material here. You can put this on a dry fly and it won't deter the dry fly by absorbing water and sinking. It actually does aid in it because the synthetic part of the material does not absorb water. So it kind of has a natural water repellency to it. To go back on the outcome of some of this stuff, all these things are chenilles. They go by a lot of different names, and what has happened over the years is kind of sad in some ways, but I certainly understand it. We came out with, basically a chenille that had a 15 mil length, and it had originally they had polyester cotton cores in them, and then eventually the industry went to GSP, or gel spun polyethylene threads for cores in the weave when they're put together, and then the piling would be loose in that. So what happened was they were put into an autoclave and heated up so that the core material would bond itself together and bond to the pile material. And this is where the word gel core came from. Gel core, the word gel core, I believe, is trademarked in some names, so you can't use it in your marketing. And people try to use that to distinguish themselves as being different from other chenilles. They really aren't. The word frizz is also used in the industry for the pile, and the word fritz was developed out of that. And again, it became a sort of a trademark name with some companies. Our stuff isn't that, it's fritz. Or our stuff isn't that, it's gel core. At the end of the day, that's just market positioning, and I found, much like other parts of the tackle trade, the difference between frizz and fritz is the same thing. That's the same difference between a dozen dew worms and a dozen night crawlers. It's about $1 a package. So they're the same thing. People just use different names to develop themselves or create themselves a marketplace to distinguish themselves from someone else. And yeah, it happens. So if we go back to the piles can be a number of things, anything from organics to a multitude of different types of synthetics, from rayons and nylons, and you name it, it's all there. But we know them as tinsel chenilles, straggle chenilles, ice chenilles, crystal chenilles, yarn chenille, polar chenille, antron chenilles, rayon chenilles, nylon chenilles. Speckled chenilles are usually a mixture of 2 or 3 types of chenille, often the same. And we would also look at that as what we call a variegated chenille. I'm just looking for some here. I had some here just a little while ago. So that's just a mix of 2 different colors, as per se, or even 3 different colors in some cases. So there's lots to it. If you dig into it, there is absolutely a ton of stuff about chenilles and not just where it's used in the sewing and in the furniture trade, but in the fly tying world, and it can get confusing for some people. So what is important is the type of core. Is it a GSP core that's been autoclaved and bonded? And the pile length and the type of material in the pile, or the mix of material that's used for the pile. But overall, it's the pile length that gives you the end result and how it will affect your fly pattern. So I have a bunch of flies that we've tied here, and everyone that came to the streamer evening where we talked about extreme chenille material, again, it's just a chenille. We've spun it together and we've created a minnow pattern with it. This whole pattern is all chenille. It's all it is. This pattern here is the cat whisker pattern. Basically what I've done is I've used the suede chenille with what was called a trilobial chenille, which when I go to any fly shop, I look for it in the bargain bin. It just never took off here because I think people just didn't know how to use it. It was also recognized as a false hackle. It kind of would be, but it'd be a wet fly hackle, not a dry fly hackle. But again, here we've just mixed, white rabbit. We've got white rabbit for a tail. We've got a suede chenille, which is spun with the trilobial chenille to create that mini leech woolly booger effect. You can change that up by changing, like I said, the pile length. So here we've taken a 15 mil blob chenille and mixed it with a trilobial chenille, and we get a very buggy looking, almost blob type pattern, but it's got a tail on it, so we would classify it more as a tractor minnow leech pattern. A lot of the blobs were originally tied just a 10, 12, 15 mil chenille, single material put in. This one is actually a mixture of a 15 mil chenille and a tinsel chenille, which is a 5 mil. The 15 mil chenille is basically a pearl, but you may not be able to see it in this light, but there is a gold tinsel wrapped inside there, so it does shine through. One of the other blobs that I tie, this is one of the ones that I use in competition quite often. It's a pink chenille, 15 mil, with a trilobial chenille, it's 40 mil. It has an absolutely stunning effect. It really shines, it really breathes, it pushes a lot of water. Just the 15 mil UV chenille by itself is really quite entrancing to fish, but you add in the trilobial, it just gives it that much more movement, and I find it extremely effective on a lot of different fish, especially rainbows. Rainbows love to just chase them, and then going back to just a normal everyday blob type chenille, but we've got the trilobial in there. And if I go into the synthetics, I have some of the older chenilles. I have a card here. It's a very, very old chenille from a buddy of mine down in Rocky, or Caroline, Dan Cottrell. He dyed this. This is an older synthetic wool and nylon mix. and we've mixed that with a 15 mil blob chenille just to get this long leggy effect. So this is kind of a pumpkin head, you know, it's the two colors of olive with orange, which is traditional pumpkin head coloring. Very, very effective in the midsummer months. Once our waters sort of get a little bit more algae, a little bit greenish filtering through light, then this pattern works extremely well. We talked about using it on dry flies. This is basically just a simple CDC caddis with an elk hair wing on top. The body underneath is a micro straggle. With the UV reflection and with a little bit of legginess, it just helps the flies float a little bit better, and it becomes highly reflective in the surface film. So fish key and see on it. This one, of course, because of the size, is a traveling sedge. This is one of the patterns I use when those are out both on lakes and on rivers. And then, of course, Todd Oishi's Vampire Leech. There's a new micro straggle out, or it's called a straggle leggy or straggle leg, and that is basically just a longer chenille. It's closer to the original material was a Vampire Vippy, and it was again the pile length which made this pattern very successful. We tie these with either in black or in olive, with orange beads or chartreuse beads, and this is probably one of my personal favorite micro leeches, either in black or in this lich and olive color, with either a marabou or a rabbit tail. So the same pattern again, except now we just have a chartreuse bead instead of the hot orange bead. If we do it in black, we gain the same thing, hot orange bead and a chartreuse bead. 4 extremely deadly micro leech patterns. Again, mixing a black chenille. This is the extreme chenille for a tail, which is just twisted together before it's tied in, and then we've mixed a 15 mil chenille with a trilobial chenille. So this is a blob chenille, a chenille blob pattern. It's all chenille, just different types of chenilles mixed together. They push a lot of water. They're very highly visible under the right light conditions, and again, something that trout absolutely love to chase. And then, of course, the clink hammer. So this is just a poly wing, grizzly hackle, black rabbit tail, and the micro straggle for the thorax section, if you can see that. So simple, easy patterns. It's just think about mixing a lot of these chenilles together to get these different effects. We have the new guard hair chenille that's coming out shortly. It's a mixture of a kind of a wool, a rayon pile with a longer chenille or a longer pile for the sparkle end of it, the tinsel end of it. So this is really a stunning material to work with. Again, it's going to probably change up the woolly booger world first of all before anything else, but I can see that's where a lot of people will start using it, but it'll be very, very popular as well. So I'll just tie a clink hammer here to start with, and we'll just run the micro straggle. So I'm just going to start, bring my thread back up halfway down the flat spot on where the thorax will be, and I'll mount a piece of poly yarn, which is good floating material. Mount that. We'll cut that at a 45-degree angle. That'll help create our taper on our fly for the body. Just got to make sure we're doing tight wraps here. Build part of the body here, and then start creating that taper. Come back up behind the poly, come in front, and we'll take a hackle and just dress that. And we want it dull side up. Again, I'll just add that down the hook shank, and it helps me create my a little bit more of the taper I'm going to use for the body. So I'm just building a nice taper on this body with the thread before I put on the rabbit. Just take our rabbit skin, we'll pull out a little bit of dubbing. If you want to run a tinsel on this, I'd probably run a 1/69th flat tinsel, or even a body pearl quill material. You can run a wire, but you can run a 0.1 mil wire or finer, which won't hurt the fly in its floatability. Slide that up. We'll start at the back of the bend and slowly do touching turns, moving forward with the dubbing. More. So this is a pattern I would also use as a bung to hang, to suspend on in lakes or in rivers, suspend very, very small nymphs. It's a great replacement for a bobber. So once we're here, I'll lift everything up and build a little dam in front, and then set my wing by posting my wing. Half dozen or so turns, and then we're ready to, well, I'll put a sunburst orange thorax on this. I mean, I could put any color on here I want. Often we'll use a lichen olive or black. But if I wanted to make it a bit more of an attractor pattern, then I'll run a sunburst here, or fluorescent orange, or fluorescent reds. Just tie that in. Thread up behind the hook eye. And then I'll take a couple full turns in the back here. 2 or 3. And bring it up front. Cross it back over just to make sure I cover all the gaps, and then still am able to stroke the chenille piles back as I wrap. I want to build it up a little bit thicker. I can by all means do so just by going back and forth. See a little bit of mass building in the thorax now, so I'll just finish this off behind the hook eye. Just force all this back a little bit. Didn't leave myself a lot of room, but it's there. But finish that off, cut off the chenille, and we can reposition the thread, reposition the fly to build a hackle around the post. So I'll just restart here. Half hitch to land all that, lock it in place, and now I'll just wrap my hackle. Oh, it doesn't want to behave. There we go. Kind of, sort of. Well, I'll take 4 or 5 turns. few tight turns there. Bury that into the yarn. Whip finish. Cut off my hackle. Cut off my thread. You can put a drop of head cement in here if you like. You have a little needle applicator, it works out quite well. And then to do my wing, I pull my wing back the length of the body, put the scissors in at the back of the body, and then go cut straight up and down. And that's proper wing length. And this poly yarn will float all day. It's highly visible. Makes a good little indicator for really, really small nymph patterns. And it floats well. So you can gink that up and you're ready to go. Very, very straightforward, simple pattern. But that's just an easy use of, you know, one type of chenille, that sparkle chenille. And so I'll do a blob here for you. So I tie pretty much all my blobs on a wide gapped hook. It's called a Hens BL 599 straight eye. Bent in point, so it's got a nice long beak on it. They're exceptional hooks for blob patterns, and they're exceptional hooks for spiders as well. But this is the hook I do use for both my blobs and for my spiders. And so we'll just start the thread behind the hook eye again, move down the hook shank, touching turns just slightly past where the barb would be. If there was a barb, it would start about here. So we'll just level off there. And what I'll do is so this has been off the card or out of the package, and it's, you know, you can see it's bloomed out fairly well, but we're going to bloom it out even more. But I've cleared away some of the pile from the core, and I'm going to tie it in right at that point. And then I'll add in the trilobial chenille. This is a holographic, so it really can change up the look of your blob. Clear that core away, or the pile away from the core there, tie that in as well in the same position. And then I'll just run with quick touching turns, moving it up behind the hook eye. The whole trick with this thing is preparing the materials. So I just pull them together, and then I'll take a turbo spin tool, which is just an alligator clip on a really good quality ball bearing swivel system. And they're just a great tool to work with when you're spinning or mixing chenilles, variegating chenilles. So I grab that, put my chenilles in there, and now I take my stainless steel brush. And just brush all this out, really bloom it up, make it nice and full. And you want everything more or less at 90, you want to get the piles as much as you can to a 90-degree angle to the core. Once you do, then you can spin this. I just love that effect. And then you can brush it out some more. You can see what it's done. I mean, this absolutely changes blobs. I've done this as well on some of the booby patterns, some of the larger ones, just to get a little different effect. And then we'll just start wrapping. And with each wrap, what we'll do is we'll pull the piling material back to the rear of the hook as we wrap forward with each turn. And you want to keep it as a thread through the pile. 3 passovers, and then pull it all back. And build my head in the front. Whip finish. Sort of back comb it a bit. So that really changes your blobs up. Take a look at that. You know, from the traditional blobs, which were, this is kind of a traditional blob. What I've done here with this one is I've mixed 15 mil chenille, blob chenille, with a 5 mil blob chenille. So it kind of almost looks like an egg with a yolk in it. And there's a pattern I call the YEG, the egg blob, which is purposely designed to mimic trout eggs, and you know, especially if you're a steelheader. I mean, this is just a traditional egg pattern, but it gives you that yolk egg effect, right? So that's, you know, very straightforward, simple blob. And like I said, I mean, there's hundreds of different colors of chenilles in all kinds of different lengths. It's just how you choose to mix them so you have those different effects. I'm really looking forward to seeing people make these for woolly boogers. You know, I know from dealing with the extreme chenille last year on the Bow River, it absolutely has a stunning effect, and the fish really reacted positively to it. So I was quite happy with it. This, again, like I mentioned, this is one of the patterns I've used in competition. I haven't really told anyone about it. I don't competition fish anymore, so it's kind of out there now. But it's a very effective pattern. It really changes the blob fishing. And so I'll do one more pattern. It's basically a micro leech, Todd Oishi's micro leech. And of course I forgot my beads. So I'll just do one without a bead. But I want to show you something here. So this is tied on a hen's BL 254, size 12. I'll tie these leeches from a size 8 down to a size 14. Normally I would either put a chartreuse or an orange bead on it, but because I was negligent in my behavior today and didn't bring one, bad me, I'll just tie it without it. Again, simple, easy pattern. I think everyone sort of knows now from watching that Gary doesn't tie difficult patterns, and it's for a reason. I'd rather spend less time at the vise and more time fishing, especially during the competition season or during the fishing season. If I have to replace something while I'm out there, that's fine, but it's not going to take me more than 5 minutes to do. So we'll just tie in a little bit of rabbit in the back. Thread moving to the back. And now I start building a taper. There's my leech. That's done. Other than a drop of head cement, like I said, normally it would be a bead here. I'd put a drop of head cement right here. That fly never comes apart. It's fast, it's easy, catches fish. So try not to make anything too complicated in the fishing methods. One of the other materials I'm playing with is the old body fur. A lot of you probably remember what this was. This is basically just a nice nylon or rayon material. It's got a little bit of sparkle in it. The pile is all pulled to one side off the core. It's a special type of weave, but it is a chenille. I've used this to replace deer hair on gomphuses. It's the deer hair pattern. So I will tie this in, tightly wrap it around a hook shank, and then clip it to shape with a pair of scissors or with a beard trimmer to create a dragonfly nymph profile. Works exceptionally well. So if you're not sure what to do with your old body fur, that's one of the things you can do with it, is use it as you would deer in replacement of deer hair, and then just clip it to shape as you want. It's a lot easier to work with than deer hair. If you have allergies, you know you're not going to be allergic to this, hopefully not. But I find it makes good sculpin heads, it makes good muddler heads. It really speeds up the system of tying. Instead of tying with deer, just tying with the old body fur to replace either the body material or the head material. And it does cut and clean very well. So that's sort of everything I've done with the chenilles. I'm not sure if there's any questions. You guys got any questions? No? Doug? How are you? Good, good. Okay. How much time we got left, guys?
20 minutes.
About 8 minutes?
20.
20 minutes. Oh, wow. We got lots of time left. Well, let's do something completely different, something I haven't done before. I'm just sitting here looking at materials. See what kind of an effect we get out of just playing with it. So I'll just load up another hook, BL599, and the booby hook. Or the blob hook, I mean. Just lay down a thread base. I'd mentioned the yegg blob. Bit of a funny story behind it, but it's a good egg pattern. And really, what I've done is taken a smaller cord chenille. I'll just pull something out here. Other part of the world, you know, there's luminescence chenilles and esthus chenilles and all kinds. Like I said, there's all kinds of different chenilles. And I'll find. So I want kind of that yolk effect. So on the outside of the egg, I want something that's more light or translucent. So I'll use an older chenille. I think it was called a canary yellow. You can't get that anymore, but you can find other translucent chenilles that are quite light. And again, we'll just clean the pile up, try to get it all. We'll strip some pile away from the core here, just so that we've got a good place to tie in real solid and directly onto the core. Now I'll spin it a little bit and do a few wraps and pull the pile back as I'm wrapping. It's a full turn. We'll get about halfway down the hook shank and tie that off. Leave it on because I'm going to add now material for the yolk part of it. And again, you'll find that some of the pile will actually have a grain to it. It might lay one way or the other on the pile or on the core yarn, and try to work with the grain so that it'll sweep back for you. So now we'll just tie. We've cleared off the pile off the front of that chenille. We're just going to tie that in, and now I'll take this and spin it together. And then I'll brush it first, just get everything standing up. You can see the difference in the chenille length, right? This is a 15 mil chenille here, and this is about a 7 mil chenille here. Okay. So it's about half. It's about 50% there, about half. We'll put them together and then we'll spin them up. See the effect that we've got? Again, brush it out, and I'll take good wrap there, dead over center, second wrap, third wrap. Make sure this is all tight, and then one of the biggest rainbows I've ever caught on the Bow River was with this pattern a few years back during the brown trout spawn. So that's tied off, and now we'll separate it again. we'll just leave this on here for now. And now we'll just start doing touching turns. This other chenille. And push it back, build a pump. I found my tamper. A weave with that, and then just finish off behind the hook eye. And once, and if you're fussy about it, take your time so you don't have any piles sticking out the front of the hook. I'm not that fussy, but I know you can be, and that's quite all right. Remove our thread, remove our first chenille, find our second chenille, get down in there with your scissor point, and follow the core down. Cut that off, and now you have a pretty darn good egg. And that glows right through. So like I said, that's a luminescent chenille as well. So you get a little bit of sun on that. That'll shine right through that lighter chenille. It's an absolutely deadly egg effect for steelhead, for trout, for any fish that you plan on going after with egg patterns. Even as a blob in lakes, as a lead fly, as a pushing fly, it's just different. This is just something they haven't, a lot of fish have never seen before. So I hope that's okay and everyone got something out of that, and thank you again for coming out and watching. Thanks out there in Wonderland, and thanks again to Reid and to Semperfli for all the things you guys have done for us, and to be able to bring this out to you. Thanks much. Have a great day. You're welcome. Oh, Doug's going to start clapping.